I had a great conversation with a lady yesterday about this because she has a daughter that lives with her. I think that makes around $3,000 a month. She makes around $3,000 per month, and a son that lives with roommates that makes around $3,000 per month. And I pointed out to her, I'm like, well, and they all rent. I'm like, well, that's $9,000 per month. You know, if you guys committed as a family to just living together for a short period of time, cutting out any unnecessary expenditures and just putting together a 5-year plan, you can acquire a primary residence, and a primary residence could also be a multi-unit property. And you can actually have your own units. Like, let's say it's a triplex or a fourplex, and rent out the fourth unit. Or if it's a triplex, each of you could live in your own unit. Let's say it's 2 ones on each side. Now all 3 of you put your monthly gross household income together. That's $9,000 a month, and you qualify easily to get a mortgage depending on your area. And you're buying a duplex or a triplex, and maybe 2 of you live in one unit and 1 lives in the other. Or if it's a triplex, everybody has their own unit. If it's a fourplex, everybody has their own unit, and you rent out the 4th unit. And you just bought an incredible asset, and you still have a lot of flexibility because of your gross monthly household income. If you happen to set it up, which I think would be ideal in terms of the business side, where at least 1 unit is being rented out, now that becomes an income producing property. And then now you can start to build up capital from that, plus the other capital from the disposable income you have from your 3 incomes combined. And you could now start to build up a down payment to acquire a different property in the near future. And you could say, you know what, let's go ahead and buy the next property like a year later as a new primary residence. We want a new primary, right? And what we'll do, we lived in this multi-unit property, and maybe you just see an opportunity to move to a neighborhood that you prefer to live in, or maybe there's a child and there's a school district that you want to live in. It could just be lifestyle. You could just say, okay, well, look, we did the multi-unit lifestyle thing. We want to just be back under one roof as a family. We see that there's benefits to that. And then you say, okay, well, let's rent out this triplex or this fourplex. Now it's fully an income producing property for you. It could be a year later, 2 years later, or whatever amount of time frame, works for your family, and whenever you have the funds to acquire the next property. Now, as a family, let's say you're 2 years in, now you own a triplex or a fourplex or a duplex, whatever it was, and now you have a new primary residence, and now that first property is now an income producing property. If it was structured properly, your entry price was good, the mortgage payment is lower than the total rent, now it's providing net income for your family, right? And then you say, all right, well, we're 2 years in. Then now, after another year, you could decide, all right, what do we do? Do we stay put in this primary? Right? Let's stay put in this primary. So let's go down the scenario. Let's stay put in this primary. What we're going to do, we're going to buy another multi-unit property, because now we've built up capital. So now we could go like 20%, 25% down, because we have money coming in from the other investment property. Plus we're saving up a lot of money, from what we're doing by saving money every month from our income. So let's say you're able to do that. You save up 25%, 20%, right? And then you say, all right, well, let's go in, and depending on the loan product, the down payment is going to be dictated by the loan product. Let's buy another multi-unit property, another duplex, triplex, or fourplex. Straight up investment, right? So now you have 2 investments. So you're 3 or 4 years in, you have 2 multi-unit investments plus a primary. And in the 5th year now, you're building up capital faster because you have multiple properties building up capital for you to acquire the next property. So in 5 years, you acquire 3 multi-unit properties in the primary. You see what I'm saying? And then now you could decide at that point, okay, what do we want to do next? We're doing well. Money is coming in. These properties are generating so much revenue that they're almost starting to build up down payments on their own for the next property. Do we want to keep living together as a family and keep this going for maybe another couple of years to acquire a few more properties before we wrap it up and go our separate ways and live in our own individual households? Or do we make that move now? And you do whatever you feel is best. And I feel like as long as you have a structure in the family where there's respect and everybody's on the same page and you have a plan, you could easily execute something like this. And you don't have to really worry about, because I've seen, for example, there was a post I made and I saw some comments where it was just very one-sided from the standpoint of, well, if you can't afford the mortgage on your own, then you shouldn't do it and keep the other person free. Okay, and what do you do in a situation where you can't afford the mortgage with one person's income alone, but you can with both? What do? Do you just keep renting? And now you're paying a rent with two incomes because you can only afford the rent with two incomes instead of paying a mortgage? That doesn't really make sense to me. I think it's better to acquire the asset, and then now you could talk to a life insurance agent about getting life insurance, and then you could talk to a real estate attorney about setting you up with your will and everything. So if something happens to you, property can be paid off by the life insurance and your child could inherit the property. Like, why wouldn't you want to do that? If you don't acquire the asset, you don't have a property to pay off with a life insurance policy. Or if if you're blessed with long life over the next, if you want to just stretch it out for the next 30 years, you're paying on the mortgage and you pay it off. Now there's no more mortgage. The only expenses are insurance and taxes on the property. Just make sure that there's enough revenue coming in to pay those things so you can continue to keep the asset in the family. These are just simple things, and I just think it's important to keep an open mind that not everybody's situation is going to be the same. I mean, we can be idealists and look at the world from our own perspective, our own finances, our own success or lack thereof. Or we could look at it from a more broader perspective and say not everybody's situation is the same. Not everybody has the same financial setup to execute the same exact way. So then you need different solutions for the different situations that exist. That's the real world that we live in of finance and real estate. That's the world that I operate in on a day-to-day basis. So I do appreciate everyone's perspective, but it's just important to add context, because then it can also help that person to look at things from another perspective and say, I never looked at it like that. I'm a high net worth, a high income earner. I could do it all on my own. I really don't need help, but it's not everybody's situation. So then they got to team up, and don't worry about it. If your concern is, well, what if you team up and something goes wrong? Okay, there's solutions for that. Number one, you can rent the property out and move somewhere else. If you got to move in with family for a little bit, let the tenant pay your mortgage until you recover. Now the property didn't go into default. You're still keeping the asset. You see what I'm saying? You don't have to lose the asset. Or you could say, if you're a child and you say, man, I feel like I'm in over my head. I bought this house. I wasn't prepared for home ownership. Things are going wrong. The expenses are hitting me. Go to your parents. Say, look, this is what's going on. Would you guys be open to, since I have a bigger house with a lot more space and I took on more than I can handle, you guys be open to putting your property up for rent and moving in with me for a while until I get everything settled? Or I rent mine out and move in with you. Now you're back to working together as a family to solve a problem and keeping both assets in the family, just thinking about the bigger picture. Now mom's grandkids are being considered and your kids are being considered. See what I'm saying? And you work together. You don't have to go into pre-foreclosure or foreclosure and suffer on your own. Not when you have a family mindset and working together as a team mindset. So you don't have to, in my opinion, you do your best to be as responsible and as practical as possible when you're going through the decision-making process. But also just keep in mind, a lady walking by me pointing to my hat, because I have a New York hat on, and I guess she's from New York. And just keep an open mind that do what you have to do to get it done, and just put the safeguards in place and have a plan just in case something goes wrong. I think that something going wrong is guaranteed at some point. Everybody's going to get their fair share of something going wrong. And if we approach things from that perspective and don't expect everything to go right, then we won't be disappointed or upset when something goes wrong. Just learn from it and just keep moving. Work together as a family, solve problems, speak to the people around you, if we create these personas like everything is always perfect, and that's what we project out on social media, for example, or project out everywhere we go, and we create these personas, now we have to live up to that. I'm not saying to put your business all out in the street. You should present yourself great. You should make sure that you look nice when you leave home. You should do your best to always present your best self. But there's nothing wrong with being vulnerable sometimes with the people that's close to you and sharing with them what's going on and turning the ego off and just being humble. And even if you did get a little bit turned up and egotistical for the period of time where you were doing well, and you felt like, you were flashing on everybody a little bit. And then now you got to humble yourself because you fell. Well, that was your lesson. Now you just learned, okay, next time it's going well, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I should, just stay humble and just keep my head down and keep working. These are just life lessons. Everybody has to go through it. But don't be afraid to humble yourself and go back to the people that you love and apologize and ask for help when you need it. It's better to ask your family to help you, right? And then also when you're asking for help, show them, put into the asking a plan and a presentation for how you're going to pay them back. That's also important too, because a lot of time, and the payback could be in many ways. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes a parent just wants to see that their child is successful. And you could just, let them know, look, the way I'm going to pay you back for doing this is I'm going to make sure I do everything possible that make sure this never happens again. And I'm going to take your counsel. I'm not going to try to just go it alone. I'm going to respect that you have life experience and I can learn from you. And I'm going to commit myself to building a life for my family to where when you guys get to an age where you can't work anymore, I would have put everything that I had into making sure that you don't have to suffer or be put in a home, and that, we have assets and things are going well so we could take care of ourselves as a family. That could be the payback right there for good morning for your parents stepping in and helping you out and committing yourself to that.